Okay.
Nope.
Um,
Fine. I can see you guys. I think you can see my screen.
yes.
No.
Uh, I mean,
I think now you can see the screen. True. I think it's perfect, right?
yes.
Yes, Anna.
I think you can see the Abhyak Academy's screen, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Awesome.
Yes, Anna.
Fine. So let's get deep dive into it. So what we have understood yesterday.
Just today about what is Python, what are the measures, and how we need to set our mind to learn Python
Mm-hmm.
and how it works.
No, I didn't explain you all these things. I just said you what is Abhyak Academy and all.
Advaita,
I'm
Oh,
just
in the introduction,
what
but
is the
apart from
logo?
that,
Why you have chosen that logo? Owl
it
logo.
mainly development.
yep, yep, yep. That's clear. So let's deep dive into it before we get into this Python because I just want to tell you something. Do you love stories?
Hmm.
Do you love stories? Okay.
Yes.
Let's think. Okay. There is one. Let discuss about one story. Okay. Let's discuss about the story. Okay. Where is this? Give me 1 second. I think there is some issue. Okay. So do you love
Can you
stories,
make it
right?
a big screen, like presentation screen కొంచెం పెద్ద చేయగలుగుతారా apart from our videos?
Okay, okay. You can adjust this. You can ping your screen so that this gets highlighted. Is it not? Is it not getting highlighted? You can just pin it, or you can just pin it so
Okay,
that it
okay.
gets highlighted. You can bring from your end so that you can directly adjust that screen accordingly.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Hmm.
You can adjust the screen like your own view in this so that you can ping your own screen so that it becomes a bigger one, the full screen.
Yeah, okay. Got it. And
Okay, fine, clear. So let's discuss something, a story. Before me proceeding into the actual subject, let me describe you something good. Okay, there is one smart lady. Okay, her name is Rishika. Okay,
Huh?
okay.
mm-hmm.
Smart lady.
So
Correct, Anna. Very much smart.
fine. So what exactly happens? So she is someone who is looking for a job kind of thing, but she has something specialty with her. Do you know what? There is something called grinding grinding stone in her village. She is the only person who has a grinding stone, the traditional grinding stone, like rubro. True.
Uh-uh.
Okay. So she is the only one person who had all these things. So looking at this, every person, okay, in the village came to Rishika and asked her. They have their own thing to grind it. Okay. Could you please do that favor for me so that we will pay you something for this. Okay. So what happened? So Rishika have started her own business. Okay. With this grinding stone. What happened? She started, and everyone started coming. 1 minute. Okay. Arun have joined. Hi Arun. Okay. Let me start from the beginning. Sorry for the interrupt. Okay. Fine. So let's clear. So Arun, how is your day? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Sorry for the late.
No problem. So Arun, do you love stories?
What
Bef-
stories?
be-
Which stories?
Any stories, general stories, where a smart lady who have come into the picture who has started doing a business. There is a there is a smart lady. Okay. Before we get into actual concept, I just want to tell you something. A story. Do you love
Um,
stories? Okay. See, now the character have changed. Now let's
Okay.
talk about some beautiful, handsome guy, Arun. Okay, Arun lived in a village. Okay, this guy is a unique guy. Why he is unique? Because in his village, he's the only guy who has this grinding stone. Arun, do you know the grinding stone? Of course, you have it because you have to know it. Ruburolu అని అంటారు తెలుగులో.
mm,
Okay,
Rubro.
this is the only one person who had this grinding stone. And looking at this, every person in the village came to this guy, saw this, he's doing something different from other people. Okay, and he told the usage of this, and everyone started making use of this by coming to Arun and requested Arun that, Arun, we also want to make this happen. Can you please help me out with this? So as the demand kept on increasing, he started asking penny for each and every request. Okay.
Mm,
Now this business went in a good way, that he started making a very good amount of money whenever there is a request. Okay. From where? From the villages. Now what happened? When a new thing comes into the picture, this information will generally pass. How? Through word of mouth. True. అరే,
Hmm.
అక్కడెవరో ఏదో అయ్యిందే, అక్కడ ఏదో చేస్తున్నారు, అరుణ్ దగ్గర ఏదో ఉందంట, లెట్స్ గో అండ్ వి ఆల్సో గెట్ సంథింగ్ గుడ్. దెన్ now the demand for this business rose. Okay, now he started. Now he felt he is the only person who is working on this, and he got to know that I can't put my effort completely here, because I'm putting all my efforts and time here to make a few penny of this, because everyone started coming in. Because being only one person, I can't handle this. What he thought, in a smart way, as I said, Arun is a smart guy. He started inventing a machine. Okay, this is a machine. Let us assume this is a machine. This is a machine which is a hardware. This hardware he integrated with this grinding stone. Now what does this hardware will do? This hardware is going to, whenever he switch on this automatically starts rotating, and it gives us that, that powder kind of stuff. Okay, now he made life easy. Life easy, because whenever he switches, because there is no need of manual work, and he made use of something called hardware equipment, which he have integrated right now. Whenever you switch it on, and this grinding machine will keep rotating this pestle. Okay, motor and pestle. Now what happened? See, when there is something new, when there is something demand, now as the productivity kept on increasing, the people started coming in. Instead of waiting in line, they started, you Arun have given them the product at a faster rate. Okay, when compared to when he's doing manually. Now his business rose, and it kept on increasing, and when there is a demand, you need to supply as much as you can, so that's how you will also grow, right? Now he thought, now I can't run my business 24 cross 7. I need to do something great, because whenever I want to, for example, if I'm not there, if you are not in the village and the demand kept on increasing, and because of which you can't stop your business. Now there is a scenario. What happened? He got some or other function to meet, there is something meet up, and he went outside of his own village. Okay, now what happened? He won't be here in the location to run this. He needs something for which this is going to automate this hardware. Okay, what is required here? He built his own software, because of which he started running his own machine or something else whenever he is not there at his premises. Even though he is not in his premises, using this software, integrating with IoT or something else, he started running this hardware, connecting to the internet services, and he started running even if he is not there. Cool. What exactly have come into the picture and what made his life so easy? Isn't it not that the software deployed into a hardware, this hardware where it connected to the original grinding stone? True. If you see, software have evolved the human life, which made us very easy, because of which where there is no manual interventions, basically a manual involvement. Software made our life so easy. True. Now if you see, if we see much more, that if you see here, you see here, now you got to know that because of software the life became much more easy. True. Now now what is this software is what the question. Now what is this software? What is this software? Software is nothing but a, no, a lines of codes which are written in some or the other programming language. This is a general thing that we know it, right? Software is a set of instructions or the line that are written in one particular programming language. True. Now if we see, this is a programming language. That means what? A language which is written in one particular, way that a machine can understand. True. A machine can really understand, so that we can make our process so easy, our work so easy, because of which we can evolve or make the things faster rate. True. Now if you see, this is a programming language. Basically programming languages are nothing but a manual instructions which are given to a computer so that a computer can understand. True. True. Now in order to build, if you see a software, what you will deploy here, you will deploy something called software here. True. Now this is what a general thing that you need to understand. Whenever, now Arun is someone smart guy. He wants to build his own software, right? In order to build software, not only this particular software, anything in this world, if you want to build something, there need to be certain process, because in order to follow it, because of which you can make things happen at the right moment at the right time. For example, if someone is, if I'm not sure, Arun is someone who is a civil engineer. Okay. Now this guy, if he wants to construct a house or something else, first he need to plan the house. He have to level the land, he have to take the measurement and all. No, there is certain process that he will follow, so that at the end he will make a final product. True. Now, in the similar way, Arun is someone who wants to build this particular software. Now, if he wants to build it, he need to follow certain process. True. We call it as something called SDLC, which is nothing but software development life cycle. Okay. So, software development life cycle is a process that every software company go through, okay, in order to build a final product. What is this product right now? It's a software. So that's the reason we call it as a software product. Since we are dealing on software, that's the reason we call it a software development life cycle. It's a process that we usually follow. Understood? If I'm not wrong, you might have heard certain processes that usually companies usually follow. You might have heard about waterfall model, okay, iteration model, okay. There is something called agile model or agile methodology. You might have heard about something called DevOps, which is the latest one right now, which we are following, where the automation is involved in this. True. Now, if you see, anyone have heard about these processes? There are a lot many processes also, spiral kind of thing, you know, incremental model, decremental model, and all, where you see certain process depending upon the software development. Different companies usually follow certain procedure or process. Okay, right now most of the companies started evolving this from agile to DevOps, where the automation is involved, where you write scripts to automate each and everything. So, hope, have you heard anytime these models? Like, anyone? True? No?
No, no, only iteration model I have learned.
Okay. So the first software development process have gone through something called the waterfall model. This is basically a software management. Okay. This comes under a particular subject called software management. Why I'm telling you this, you will come to know. Now, they understood that they have to go through certain process. True. Let us assume that they are going through something called agile model. Okay, where agile model usually is a process where this is a way that most of the companies have adopted. They usually go through something called a requirement analysis, designing part, okay, implementation part, testing part, and deployment, final deployment in the production servers. This is how generally they usually follow this process in order to build this particular software. Now, they are following, let us assume that Arun is following certain process to build a software. Now, if you see, in order to build a particular software, in order to build a particular software, you need different kind of people for a different for work. Since you have to build it, you need a developer, you need a developer, and when you build it, you need a tester. So he has a team, so that means in every team there will be something called a developer and a tester. Developer is someone who develops the code. When he builds a code, he does unit testing in his own environments. That means I will tell you what are these environments. Okay. Now, once a proper code was developed, the tester have to test the code or the features of the software. For example, if you see, there is a website which offers you a login page, the username, password, and a login, and the tester have to test this page, web page. How we have to test? He will create some dummy profile, username. If he gives right and the password right, he have to log in into his own account. If not, he have to this page have to decline the access. True. This is we call it as authentication services. Okay, where you authenticate someone into your something database or websites basically. Now, every software development process basically go through certain environments. Do remember these things. There are three different kinds of environments that a software was built in. First thing is nothing but test environment. This is the questions that will be asked in the interviews. Where do you test your code? Do you directly deploy your code in UAT or the prod? Or before that, you do generally test your code in test environment. Where do you build it? Okay, these are general questions. So in the test environment, where there's something called, I will tell you, before software development process, there is something that we usually get from the clients. For example, I'm the client for Arun. Okay, let me go to next screen so that you'll understand well. Or else let me erase this so that this will be. Yeah. See, let's deep dive into something beautiful concept. Do remember this. This is a very required concept. Before, if someone, if you stand in an interview panel, this is a general thing that you are supposed to explain for the person who is interviewing you. Okay, do remember this. Now, Arun is someone who owns his own IT company. Okay, IT company, and I am the client for Arun, and I came with certain requirement. Okay, stating that I want a particular software for so and so use. Okay, now Arun will ask me in return, I want something called SRS document. What is this? SRS stands for Software Requirement Specification Document. We also call it as CRS, Customer Requirement Specification Document. We also call it as BRS, Business Requirement Specification Document. Okay, Arun have asked me this document. Sometimes in the interview they might ask what is SRS or BRS or CRS. You have to be in a position to handle, because you are the developer, right? You have to know all these things because being a developer, you should understand what are the software requirements, isn't it? For which you have to read these documents. What is the document that will be given to you? Is this document only, software requirement specification document. Okay, now Arun is someone who owns his own company, and he has allocated certain team to it. Okay, and now right now Arun and the manager who have, or a product manager usually came here, no, comes into the meeting, and they will discuss, and finally they will get a document, SRS document. Right now he will form a team, that this team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4, and so on. So this goes on. Now, in this, you need to understand certain things. Each team has its own developer, developer 1, tester 1, developer 2, tester 2, developer 3, tester 3, and so on. Now, develop now. If you see, this is a software, whole software, and this software will be segregated into something called builds. We call it as builds. Understand the term called build. That means what? If you see everything in this, being a software developer, you will not be given entire software to build it. Okay, okay, you would be given a feature to build it. For example, if you are given a feature to build this only file, if I click on file, you are supposed to give me all these things. Okay, now this build is given to team 1, and this team 1 will build this part of the software which is called a build 1, using their own code language. It's not that, you have to build it only one particular programming language, or no. Every software or every team will build with their own programming language where machine can understand. Do you understand? Now, these builds were finally built and these were integrated. And finally, we'll get a particular software that we give it to the client. Now, where do we build these softwares? There are three different kinds of environments that we go through. First thing is called test environment. Initial build was built here. Okay, test environment, or we call it as QA environment. Okay, this is where you start building this particular project. Now, once it was done, you would be deploying in your own servers. We call it as UAT environment to check whether the product was going good or not. Okay, in your environment before, because ఇది మన ఎన్వైరన్మెంట్లో కరెక్ట్గా పనిచేస్తుందో లేదో తెలిసినప్పుడే కదా క్లయింట్ సర్వర్లో డంప్ చేసేది, డిప్లాయ్ చేసేది. ట్రూ. We check here finally if everything is good. They will give, now the project manager will give you an approval, product manager will give you an approval to deploy something called in production server. Now once the production server was deployed, the client, that means me, will come and will check, okay, in my production server. Before that, there is something called alpha testing and beta testing, okay, that usually go through in order to release this final product. Once the final project was deployed in the production server, now this software is right now ready to use and the customers will start using this software. Now, do remember this: when you are building it, you build within your own programming language, and some other team will build it in their own programming language, because some team will be in Hyderabad, some team will be in US, or some team will be in somewhere. Depending upon their own skills and all, they build it and finally they integrate it. Okay, this is called integrating final end-to-end testing. That will be done at the final one. But no, my intent is what, when you try to develop, you will develop in your own programming language. It's up to you. Clear? Any doubts in this? Any doubts as of now? So we got to know that software basically makes our life so easy. First thing, in order to build a particular software, we usually follow certain process. We assume right now we are going through something called agile process. In agile process, where we go through something called, how the software, you might have heard about something called sprint planning, because when the team was assigned to build a particular project, they give you something called a time, a span, a duration to build it. It's not that they will give you long time, no, 1 year or 2 years to build it. They will give you something called a duration to build it. We call it as something called a sprint. What we call sprint. Okay, we call it as sprint sprint plan అంటారు, లేదా sprint cycle అని అంటారు. This sprint cycle can be for 1 week or 1 month, depending upon the project and the project size and the budget also. Okay, so you would be building your own project within an allocated time, and in your own environments that you might be doing. Before I tell you something, I want to discuss few more things before I get into programming language, because as a programmer you have to know all these things. If someone asks you what is so on so, you should not be in a position to dumb faces and all. Right? Now, I will tell you something good one. Okay, you might have heard about, there's something called servers, right? Basically, you might have heard about something called servers. Now, what do you mean by a server? Server is something.
Where we can store our data. Like if company has a many, I mean, like so much data, we don't have that much storage in our laptops. And some people work from home. Like some people will work from home. So if someone need to access their data, so they will store in the server. Server can will be accessible from wherever, from any place.
Basically, remote servers. Okay,
Yeah,
remote servers, where if you want to access some data from where sitting at home or some other place in the world,
yeah.
you can access these things By remote only. You might be connecting through secure shell in order to get the data from wherever you want to. True. Now, in general server बोले तो क्या, the main components of server will be this: memory, CPU, RAM. True. If something, basically, if this is, we call it as ROM. Okay. If there is something where hardware which contains these three parts, okay, we call it as a server. Now the question is a computer is a server? The laptops that you are using, is a computer is a server? Yes. Our computers are also a local server. We heard it something called local host or local servers. True. Now because computer also have this CPU, RAM, ROM. Now you need to understand these things. CPU is something called a processing unit, which basically heart of this server, which basically processes, takes inputs, gives me output. Okay, like it is something like a chef who is in the kitchen. If we order something, he will go and make it happen and give it. True. Whenever this CPU runs a particular application, to order to run this application, it requires RAM, not ROM. Do remember this. It requires some space to run for it. True. That memory will be taken from RAM. And when the computation was done, okay, when the calculation or something else operation was done, the final output, if you want to store it, you can store it in ROM, where you call it as no, hard disk drives, SSDs. Okay, this comes into this particular thing. Do you understand? Clear in this? Any doubts? No doubts, right? Any questions?
అన్న వన్స్ అగైన్ ఇది సిపియు
Okay.
నుంచి
Okay. Now CPU is something which is a central processing unit, which is required to run all the operations like basic mathematical calculations, or if you open an application, how it is running, CPU is telling you that to run this particular application. Now when you request something, it should have some space to run here and there. True. Because for example, if I want to uh, now there is a software which requires something to get data. Okay. Or else let's assume that, let us take a calculator. Calculator is something which you give inputs and it gives you output. True. Now where is this computation and all will happen? This computation and all to happen, it requires some space, a memory, to run these calculations and give you an output. Okay. That calculation or computation will be done in the RAM. Okay. It requires some space. For example, if you see a chef, in order for him to cook, you will not be given entire house, right? You will be given kitchen room to run, to make things happen. True. In the similar way, for an application to run, it requires some space. True. That space will be given by RAM. Okay. The application will make use of a memory which is given by RAM, and it works there. And if you want to store this output in somewhere in the computer or somewhere, you use ROM. Clear? The hard disk drives. True. Or else we call it as SSDs right now, which are real, faster and reliable. True. Solid state drives, right? True. So this is how general we talk it out. But if you really think of, I'm telling you this concept way more beyond what do you expect. Now why I'm telling you, because you are someone, you are here as a developer, you have to know all these things before me getting into something. Now if you see, there is something called software, there is something called hardware. Now who is going to connect these two? This is software and this is hardware. who is going to integrate or communicate between these two. There's something called, this is called OS, operating systems. Okay, this OS will lie on the servers. Clear? On the servers, you see OS, operating systems. What are the operating systems we have? Basically, Windows, iOS, Linux. You see different kind of OS, right? Red Hat kind of Ubuntu, where you see different kinds of OS. True. Now this OS will sit on this particular servers. అంటే సర్వర్లో ఫస్ట్ డిప్లాయ్ చేసేది ఏంటిది ఓఎస్. ఓఎస్ ఆర్ సాఫ్ట్వేర్స్. ఓకే, దట్ ఈస్ అ సాఫ్ట్వేర్ విచ్ సిట్స్ ఆన్ దిస్ servers, and these servers basically communicate between the software and the hardware. Okay, now this OS, if you run a particular software, this is going to communicate with the OS, and the OS is going to do all these things. Clear? Understood? Any doubts in this? No? Hope I am clear with everything, which is quite required initially to understand what exactly a code. Before we write a code, before which we need to understand what exactly where we are writing the code, how it is, how it will process each and everything. Hope I am clear with this, right? No more questions. Right. So let's get into something called a software. Let's get into actual concept right now. Okay, where we are into something called Python now. We are building particular software. Software is nothing but a programming language. True. This programming language is nothing but is a manual instructions that I am giving to a particular machine. A machine. True. Now machine is something which cannot understand human languages. True. True. It should be something like I write something in my own language and machine have to understand, because machines usually understand ones and zeros, right? What do you call these codes? Bytecode,
Binary
right?
code.
Yes,
Byte.
binary code or bytecode. If you dig deep, this is also called something called Morse code. Morse is a scientist who discovered this zeros and ones. Do you know there is something called black hole? Black hole, black hole గురించి ఎప్పుడైనా చదివారా? Where there you won't be any time kind of thing, right? Morse is someone, before, Stephen Hawking, he is a guy who discovered this black hole kind of stuff which is there in the universe, right? From there it was derived, and that's a way more beyond explanation, which I will go somewhere out of my topic. Now if you see machines can usually understand ones and zeros. Now when I'm writing my own language, how this is converted into something called zeros and ones, there should be some person who have to translate each and everything, right? True. This, there should be something called translators who have to translate each and everything which I am writing right now. True. These translators are nothing but compilers. Hope you heard about this. Compilers or the interpreters. Okay. Now these interpreters or compilers usually convert a human language into something called zeros and ones. Now what is the difference between a compiler and an interpreter? Compiler is something which usually converts the code in one go. You give entire file and it will process every line. If it is if a program file consists of 1,000 lines, it will compute each and every line. Finally, it gives you a result. Okay, that means it will process the entire file and give you an output. But interpreter is not same as such. Interpreter will go line by line. Okay, interpreter is something which goes line by line. For example, if there is an error in the code line, it will stop the execution there. What is the advantage? Because when you compute entire code, it takes some time. For example, if there is a program file which has 1 million lines, to compute all this, it takes certain, for example, 1 hour. but we finally it gives you an error. The error was in the first or 10th line or something else. It's a waste of time, right? So that's how the interpreters have come into the picture. If there is an error in the first line, I will give you an error stating that on so and so line, the error, there is an error. Try to rectify this. Now, these interpreters are something which converts the code line by line. Now, if you see, we are learning something called a programming language. Okay, we are learning a programming language where Python is an interpreter. Python is an interpreter, it's not a compiler. Python is an interpreter which executes the code line by line. Now, before me getting to much more deep dive into it, I want to tell you something called programming languages were classified into two types basically: high level programming language and low level programming language. High level language is nothing but, okay, which is very close to English, like the Python code that we write. Low level languages are something like no, Java, C, and all, where you there won't be much text, human text, the alphabets and all. If you see Python is somewhere, Python is a programming language that similarly looks like something like you are texting it, like the WhatsApp chat kind of stuff. Since we can understand it, and you know, which is very close to it, okay. If it is a machine over here and it is a man over here, the language which is very close to human where humans can understand, we call it as high level language. If it is a language which is very close to zeros and ones, we call it as low level language. And right now, Python is a high level language where it is an interpreter. Understood? If someone asks you what is a Python, Python isn't something called an interpreter, and which is a high level language. Clear? And Python is very easy to understand because since we write everything in something called English text kind of language, which makes our coding very easy. There won't be much syntaxes as Java or something else. Python is very simple. Clear? Now, if you see, these compilers are also software, or the interpreters are also softwares. Now you might see that Python interpreter something called Python or something else. If an interpreter language which was written in something called C language, we call it as Python. If the interpreter, you see that if it was something called written in something called Python, we call it as Python. If this interpreter was written in something called Java, we call it as Jython. Okay. In general, if someone says that's a Python, that means the interpreter was written in a language Python. Clear? Now, what we have discussed, there is something called a person who is going to talk to the machines in his own language, and the translator, which is nothing but an interpreter, which basically translate a human language into something called zeros and ones. Hope I'm clear with this. Any doubts? No doubts, right? Now let's see what exactly happens here. That means when you write a code, when you write a code, when you write a code, you basically give this to something called interpreter. Okay? Interpreter basically converts this English language or something language into something called zeros and ones. And this will be before displaying on the screen, there is something called a virtual VMs where this will compute everything, and this is going to display your results over here. Okay, this is how generally process, how the code was processed and given, the output was displayed here in this fashion. Okay, Before we get into it, right now you understood what exactly a Python and the interpreters and all. Clear? Any doubts as of now? Any doubts? Any any questions or something else? Because from tomorrow's class we're gonna start something where we'll directly get into code. No theory, no nothing. We'll directly go. We'll start doing projects. Okay, but anything, any question as of now? నేనైతే మీ పొజిషన్ ఉన్నప్పుడు పిచ్చి పిచ్చి డౌట్లు అడుగుతాను నేనైతే. నెత్తి తింటుండే వీడు ఎందుకు వచ్చిండ్రు ఆ క్లాస్లో కానీ అంటుండే. My professors used to tell me, "Arey, this guy is there in the class. Let's skip the class." Right? You know how I used to work. If there is a class, okay, if it is going to start, I do my own research before me getting into the class. I give my 100%, or what not 100%. I will give 120 or 150%. Before me getting into the class, I will get to know all the things. And I used to ask questions, and teacher used to get fed up with me, professors and all. So you have to be in that learning mode, because that's how you will learn. Because when you're learning new stuff, you can't remember it for a long time, right? You have to work on it again and again so that you can recall it for a longer amount of time. Clear? So before me proceeding further to for the next class, I request you to something called install your virtual machines. Basically, I will tell you. Now if we are writing this code, right? We are writing this code. Now we write this code. The question is, where do we write this code? Initially, when there is no something called GUI, graphical user interface. Okay, when there is no graphical user interface, UI, basically we call it as UI. There is something called terminal. Everyone used to write the code in terminal, and by default, if you open your command prompt, and you can see that, open your command prompt, open your command prompt. In the search button, you type command prompt, and you will see a prompt appearing there, and you just type there Python and enter. Can someone do that?
Yes, and I have Python 3.10.11 version.
Yes. So when you run that command, that means the moment you open, let me stop sharing. So what can I do? Okay. Oh, how can I go into a that screen? Is what the question.